Predecessor Sue Powell for the organization of the exhibition. Louder? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Thank you all for coming, is what I said, basically. And thank you very much to Jamie and to her predecessor, Sue Powell, who we met before we met Jamie, and also to Caroline Baxley of the Cinema Gallery in Urbana for making the initial connection. This retrospective of work of our mother, Barbara Rogers Houseworth, has been a long time coming. And I think the person most pleased to see this exhibition tonight would have been our father. He was always asking what we were going to do with all this work, because this is only a small part of her output. And I wish he were allowed to see it, but hope he's looking on in some way. He was well aware of her talent and facilitated her work whenever he could, and certainly valued it. My parents decided to get married the day of my mother's graduation from Indiana University. But Barbara hoped to carry on with her painting, and she did for the 6 years when they lived in Indianapolis, and in a very small apartment. She exhibited her paintings in the John Heron School of Art and pushed a baby buggy with a baby and a painting in it. And back there are some of the paintings that she did while she was a student at Indiana and while she was living in Indianapolis. Then the young couple moved around during the Korean War because my dad was in the army. They lived in Texas and then in Colorado before moving to Urbana, Illinois in 1954. And during those days, she did less painting, but when she settled in Urbana, she picked up her brush again, and her second daughter provided much inspiration for her work, and there are many pictures that look very much like Susan. And you can see some of them in the section over there on the family. She painted in a corner of the kitchen, and then in the corner of the garage, and didn't have much outlet for her work except for, fortunately, a neighbor commissioned her to do some literary maps for the Society of English Teachers. And she really put her heart and soul into these maps. They aren't exhibited here tonight, but...
Feedback.
What?
Feedback.
Feedback? No?
Yeah, I'm buzzing.
Something I
wrong.
did? I don't think so. Can you hear me now? Yeah. These literary maps aren't exhibited here tonight, but you can see reproductions of them in the book that I wrote about her, which is, there's a copy back there that you could look at. So she exhibited these maps in Chicago in probably about 1957 and sold them quite well. But that was really the only outlet that she had, and the rest of her work was put in a trunk, and we really didn't know it was there until after she became too unwell to paint anymore and to take care of her own studio. And I found many of them stuffed into a trunk in her workroom, and many of them are now out for the first time in this retrospective. I'm asked if, I have been asked often if our mother would have been pleased to have seen this show. And my feeling is yes, she would have, but the response would have been complicated, I think. Goes back to what art is and why we paint and why we look at art and why we enjoy it. And for me, art is a lot about communication. And Barbara, our mother, certainly knew how to tune into her innermost thoughts and emotions, and they came out on paper. And Picasso-like, I think she never really did anything. Well, we knew she never threw anything away, and almost everything she did, there was an energy in the line, and the colors were good and subdued and harmonious. So she certainly was able to connect with her own inner emotions, and also with nature and what she saw around her. We knew she could paint if she wanted to, in a realistic way. Some of the landscapes, for example. There's one portrait of her best friend that is a very good likeness. But mainly she wanted to paint from her imagination and from her own feelings and what she felt. So, as a child, we both knew that she was gregarious. We often had to stand around and wait while she chatted to people. But sharing her deepest and innermost thoughts and emotions was something different and more difficult for her. And I think it was easier for her to put it down onto paper with her paints than in speech. In order to have an exhibit like this, I think one needs a lot of support from family, friends, colleagues, and someone else who understands and appreciates what one is doing. And in the 50s, after she graduated from university and left Indiana, she didn't have an outlet or a way to exhibit her work. And so not many people knew that she painted, although in the community she was very active and used her artistic skills whenever she could in the local PTA and the Girl Scouts and such as that. But most of the work that she did, as I say, ended up in a trunk in the corner of her studio. So today it's very different, and with the gallery walks like here in Decatur, there's more possibilities for outlets, and I know she would have been very pleased. I think when one first begins to exhibit, it is a little bit nerve-wracking. I remember it because I do a bit of art myself. That is, when I first exhibited, it was like I felt dancing naked on a table because you expose yourself. But she was a thespian and she liked performing, and I know she would have been pleased to share with you all her work. So one last word in conclusion. This is only a very small part which Jamie and Sue Powell, her predecessor, have chosen of her oeuvre. There's much, much more. And there are different aspects to it, and I think another gallery in another place might choose a different part of her work to exhibit. But it's very wonderful to have this ensemble together and on the wall, and thank you all very much, especially Jamie.